Remember this message not as human words, but as truly the word of God.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Some Pharisees came to Jesus, and to test him they asked, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason?" Jesus answered, "Have you not read that the one who made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, 'For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh.' So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate." They said to him, "Why then did Moses command us to give a certificate of dismissal and to divorce her?" Jesus said to them, "It was because of your hard-hearted heart that Moses allowed you to divorce your wives. But from the very beginning, it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, except for unchastity, and marries another, commits adultery." His disciples said to him, "If such is the case of a man with his wife, it is better not to marry." But Jesus said to them, "Not everyone can accept this teaching, but only those to whom it is given. For there are eunuchs who have been so from birth, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by others, and there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuch for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Let anyone accept who can." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise you, Lord Jesus.
Our Gospel reading today is from Matthew chapter 19. And Matthew chapter 19, the text of our Gospel reading today is always a worrisome text for very many of us. It is either we are involved in marriage divorce situation, or we know people who are greatly suffering because they have gone through marriage and divorce. But the text, really, it's about a philosophical and theological debate. It is not so much about castigating divorced people, but to clarify a matter in the law. When it comes to divorce, in the time of Jesus, in the Old Testament times, there were two schools about divorce. Our text today says, some Pharisees, not the Pharisees, some of the Pharisees came to Jesus and to test him. To become a Pharisee, you either have attended either of the two schools. The first school was called the School of Shammai. Rabbi Shammai established a school. It's called a rabbinical school. There were two schools. It's like today you can either attend, it's like there are many colleges today, but in the time of Jesus there were two principal colleges where you go to learn scripture. The first one is called the College or School of Shammai, and the other one is called the School of Hillel. Now, the school of Rabbi Shammai was very conservative school. And so his belief and what the rabbis that graduated from the school of Rabbi Shammai believe about divorce is what Moses wrote in Deuteronomy chapter 24. So if you want to understand what Moses said, you read the book of Moses, Deuteronomy 24, and Moses says adultery. If there was adultery, you can divorce. The man, it talks about the man, can divorce his wife. The school of Hillel, more liberal, says for any reason at all, if you don't like her cooking, you can divorce her. If you don't like the way she dresses, if you don't like her behavior, you can divorce her. And so there was no agreement between the rabbis that belonged to the school of Shammai and the rabbis that belonged to the school of Hillel. And so the text begins from there. And so some of the Pharisees who were arguing decided to come to Jesus. Now, remember that Jesus, since he was 12 years old, has been arguing with the rabbis and disagreeing with them. When we read the Gospel of Matthew, we talk about the finding in the temple. Jesus was 12 years old when he was already arguing with the two schools, the rabbis in the temple. And so they came to Jesus, and to test him, they wanted Jesus to either side with the school of Shammai or to side with the school of Hillel. But Jesus did something very interesting. Jesus did not side with any of the two schools. Jesus did two things. The first thing, he empowered women on the question of divorce. And he says, it is not just about the man divorcing his wife. Because he said, Moses allowed us to write her a certificate of divorce and to divorce her. Jesus says, no. Go back to scripture. He says, forget about Moses. Moses wrote the law because of your hardened hearts. He said, but go back to the very beginning where God empowered women. And so he quoted Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, and Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. And he says to them, he says, have you not read that since the very beginning, God made them male and female? They are equal. In a marriage, male and female are equal. He says God made them male and female. That's how God made them. And he says to them, they are one. They become one flesh. Not two. He says they are no longer two, but one. The commitment made them one. And the decision is a decision of both together. And so the Pharisees, they argued further. They did because it was a little strange. Even his disciples were shocked. The disciples of Jesus were shocked that Jesus will go that far. And so the text says, his disciples said to him, if that is the case, He says, then it is better not to marry at all. If male and female are equal partners in the relationship, and if decisions have to be made jointly, together, because it is marriage and it is love. But Jesus now introduces something. And then he says, emphasize God's intention in a relationship, in marriage. He says, what is the mind of God? Moses did not create marriage. God created marriage. It was the first institution that God established. God established, he blessed them. He created them male and female. He blessed them, and it says, increase and multiply. That was the first blessing that human beings got, marriage. And so Jesus reminded them that this love is what should be emphasized. If relationship breaks down, he says, think about the love, think about the blessing, think about the vows that you pronounced. He says, think about that. A few days ago, we were reading about what Jesus was talking about, conflict resolution. When he was talking about if your brother or sister sins against you, he says, try some resolution. Talk about the matter. If both of you cannot resolve the matter, he says, invite people to help you. If you cannot, if that resolution doesn't work, he said, invite the elder, the Kohen, the church, and let them see to it that there can be reconciliation. It is a challenge, and as we all know, divorce really doesn't solve all the problems. And so Jesus now says, which was what is most, he says, the one who divorces his wife. Understand that Deuteronomy 24 talks about this certificate. The man gives a certificate. Now, what that simply means is that even after the divorce, the woman is not free to remarry until the husband goes to the rabbinical courts, to the tribunal, and obtains this certificate and gives to her and says, okay, I free you now, you can go and remarry. And so Jesus Christ says, no, that is not necessary. And so he now puts the onus on the man, and he says to the man, if you divorce your wife, except for unchastity, and you marry another, it says you commit adultery against her. Like we say, it is a difficult teaching, but it is not so much a levity kind of thing. It is not onerous. But what Jesus is wanting us to understand is God's intention is that male and female are equal partners in a marriage relationship. And any decision, be it marriage, be it any decision that will affect the family, that will affect the children, it has to be a joint decision to be made. And that is the teaching of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church teaches that man and woman are equal partners in the relationship.